You are listening to the Level Up Your Gaming podcast, episode 23, Splitting the Party versus Group Play. Today we talk about party play versus individual play. We talk about how to manage the group when they do split up and why you may encourage this. We also talk about how to keep a group together through various means. If you'd like to participate in the discussion or leave us feedback, you can contact us at levelupyourgamingpodcast@gmail.com. Also, if you like the show, please subscribe, leave us a review, or tell a friend. Now sit back and enjoy the episode. Welcome into the Level Up Your Gaming podcast. My name is Aaron, and across from me, he'll always try to split up the party to hunt you down easier. Jared.
Divide and conquer.
Divide and conquer. You learned well from the Predator.
I did. Yes, I will always try to divide and conquer. Yeah, so what we're talking about is splitting the party versus group play. Aaron, do you want to expand on that?
No, we're going to be talking about what happens when your party decides to go in all different directions, how to manage that versus trying to keep them together as a group. And this is usually the biggest, hardest challenge that you have because a lot of times it makes sense to split the party. You know, in real life, you divide and conquer. However, in a game, when you start splitting the party, that presents a myriad of challenges.
It does. So I guess one of my first pieces of advice to all of our new storytellers, masters of ceremonies, dungeon masters, game masters. It's kind of weird saying game masters now that so my wife and I just ended up watching the Hunger Games. So I'm like, game master, How evil. Good series. Four movies, very good. That's off topic. I guess my first word of warning would be, even in the event of a splitting a party where there is a high risk of metagaming, which we've talked about excessively, not excessively, but we have a podcast over it, where there's possibilities of PvP even. The one thing that I will caution everyone, because I think every storyteller has had the thought and maybe even executed a few times, do not physically separate your players.
Yeah, we have that in our Don'ts podcast. Remember that? That was one of our, you probably shouldn't do this. I'm pretty sure we had that in our,
you probably split your group.
Yeah. Don't take them off and do a side session and do a,
no, because everyone's sitting back there bored and you're losing momentum. Always keep everyone at the same table. Just, make sure there isn't a lot of metagaming. You're going to have to mitigate that a lot because it's going to be natural. It's going to be, because as human beings, there's the old saying that the jury doesn't forget, the jury doesn't disregard. No matter how much a lawyer says, I want that stricken from the record, and the jury is ordered to disregard, they don't disregard. So we're naturally inclined to do that. You can tell a player, like, you don't know, you can tell a player, like, I'm sorry, you don't have that information, you're not with the second group. You can tell that, but just be understanding in the split party situation that you're going to have to manage the metagame. It's something that you'll actively have to manage because it's going to come natural, and you need to be understanding that it is coming natural. They're not trying, it's just happening.
You're hearing everything at the table, so it's really easy to be like, I know that piece of information. And in some cases, you might allow it, I guess. But in a lot of time, like, this is kind of the question of what do you allow, what don't you allow to be heard and discussed and, through the ether, so to speak. Yeah.
and that is, and we'll talk about table talk and what to consider. Be prepared for that player who gets excited because the second group is going up against something that he is aware of, to do the shout out. The shout out happens, and I hate saying this after saying that the jury cannot forget. You got to tell the jury to forget that. You can't use that info. And just hope that you're really train your players to disregard advice that isn't theirs. So splitting the party, I don't recommend it for long periods of time. I do it to hunt down my prey. I mean players. I mean my friends. I mean not hunt them down. That's what I mean. I use it as a tool, especially in scary situations. It's always more frightening when you don't have a friend right next to you, who's ready to battle it out with you. Excuse me. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, we're doing a late night podcast,
It's a late night podcast. We're almost past Jared's bedtime here, so
which is the crack of 8 o'clock. 8 o'clock, time for Jared to go nappy nap. Um, so, well, I was a teacher for years. You know,
you're a
teachers
teacher
go
for
to bed
years.
at
You still wake up super early with your wife, and you got a lot of other things. So, you just came back from quite a long trip, so
Yep, I did. So forgive me for the yawning, ladies and gentlemen. But back to the case today, I don't recommend it for long periods of time. If you do have a party split that's going to be for long periods of time, again, don't do physical. Ugh, I hate saying this, but it's an option, is to host games on separate nights for two groups of people.
I hate that
Aaron goes
idea.
against it. See,
I
I
hate
hate
that
it.
idea.
Good. I was hoping for the voice of sanity.
The problem with splitting your party is twofold. So Jared's bringing up right now that it's hard to manage and engage. We've talked about it before. It's hard to engage the other players when you split the party up. Okay, because now not everybody is involved within the scene itself, and so you have a lot of dead time. And we talked about it in our managing time podcast, how you work your way through the table. But it's so difficult once you split up the players that it's almost recommended, if you can encourage players to go as a group or coerce them into going as a group, it's always better. It's good in some situations, like Jared said, if you want to hunt down a player, you really want to scare the crap out of them, that's good to do. But I would if you're going to split up the party, I would strongly recommend that you do not do separate game sessions, separate nights, stuff like that.
Like I said, the voice of sanity.
I've never seen it work. It's always been kind of an ugly proposition.
And it's true. And what you're saying is very true, because, and I don't know why the thought crossed me. I'm tired.
You're not thinking straight.
I'm not thinking straight, because everyone's coming together to be with friends. That's the whole purpose and the whole goal. And two nights would not work, because then you're splitting up friends. You want friends to come together. Manage the metagaming rather than splitting up. I don't even know how I say it. Ladies, jury, disregard my
They can't forget,
advice.
Jared. They can't forget.
Okay, well, then I'm screwed. So don't do separate nights. That is a very poor idea, even though I suggested it a few minutes ago. Let's not talk about that ever again. So don't do the separate nights, because you're breaking up the group, the party, the friends, those moments of laughter where somebody spews Mountain Dew out of their nose because they laugh so hard. Keep everyone together.
If you have a GM that does that, that's a very LARP thing to do. That's what they used to do at like Denny's and stuff. And
I hated that. Yeah,
they would take people aside. You would do side sessions and things. It was a very, like for like the most like socially engaging role playing, like you split people up. You got them separate from one another.
For LARP, it almost kind of works. The splitting up of groups, just because the other players should be engaging in their own. They don't need a storyteller for everything in LARP. You can do a combat without the need of the storyteller at all. There's been plenty of those situations where I remember when I was an assistant storyteller at LARP. They were like, "Oh, this person got killed." I was like, "What? When did that happen?" And they were like, "Oh, it happened early in the night while you were working with that other group." I'm like, "And you killed that guy?" Oh, okay. LARP is more PvP oriented, and not just PvP, but player-player interaction. But I like to focus on tabletop here. I've tried my hand at LARP. LARP was a very fun experience for those of you who enjoy LARP. Knock your socks off. As I got older, it wasn't for me. The winter nights just killed me.
Yeah,
I got too cold, and I had a a teaching job, and Friday nights never worked out anymore. That's for certain. Like, but so back to the idea of splitting up the party. Splitting up the party temporary. Keep it timed. The left and the right of the cave. And really, what you need to do is you need to have good time management. And we've talked about this before with time management in our podcast on that. I like setting a timer for groups. And this actually works a lot better with larger groups. Give each group 10 minutes. How many turns you can get through in that time period is awesome. Let's say it's a group of 6 players. You got 3 on one side, 3 on the other. You're giving 10 minutes to those 3 players. And if they move fast, they move fast. You might get through, let's say each player's only taken 1 minute, so they get through 3 rotations of turns. But the other group, it takes, one guy 4 minutes. But in that smaller group, please be mindful of the time, because if you're going to give them 10 minutes for each group, and there's the one player who takes 45 minutes to make a freaking decision, you need to manage him. You need to be like, hey, I need you to speed up because the other players need their turns as well. Okay, well, then I do this. And if they get super frustrated, you got to deal with that. Just manage it. Hey, they need their turn too. It's just nice to make sure that everyone gets a turn to play. So splitting up the party, maintain the duality. As Aaron said, I try to encourage my players to stay together as a group as much as possible, unless I'm trying to scare the crap out of them or hunt them down, using some dark beast. I try to encourage my players to come together. Now, this is where it is about leveling up your gaming, is you need to train your players to stay together. I don't really have to do it anymore. I mean, to be perfectly honest, I will say that 99% of the time that I'm like, so what are you guys doing? Like, my players come together, make a plan, consent on the plan, and go together everywhere. There's very little party split.
Part of that is because of years of being traumatized by you, where if we do split up the party, then one of us is stuck, or we're like, fighting a werewolf with a toothpick. And the other 2 people are sitting around, having tea somewhere. It's like,
yep, and the other one's dying or fighting off a werewolf with a boiled egg.
So I mean, I again, it's been something that I think we've learned to kind of do, is just stay together for the most part. The other thing too is that a lot of our situation, there's ways that you can force your players to kind of stay together. So if you're in a Modern Knights game, if the players are traveling in one car, guess what?
One car.
They're stuck together. They have to go to the same place. It makes a lot of sense. I'll just give you an example through our investigation games. It makes a lot of sense that, like, I'm going to go talk to this person. Will you go talk to this person? Or I'm going to go talk to this person. Will you go search the forest and see if you can find any clues? Like, it makes sense, but when you have one car, it's almost impossible to do that. Because it's like, what, I'm going to drop you off here, pick you up in half an hour?
I dropped you off for soccer practice. I'll be back in 2 hours. Sorry. I'm pretty sure our parents used to do that. Just like drop us off places and be like,
oh yeah.
2 hours.
Yep.
Parenting back in the 90s as compared to the nowadays.
End of a generation.
Yeah. Now they just text their parents like, I'm ready for a pickup. Back then it was like, we'll be back in 2 hours. We don't give a crap where you are. Just be here. So, one of the methods that I use to coerce players into staying together is, are you going with them? The very simple question, are you going with player A? Are we all agreed on the plan? Make it a team effort. Are we all agreed on this plan? Are we going here together? Most players are actually just going to say yes for the sake of group and community. If your players are not doing that, if they're always like, well, fuck no, I'm going left, if you've got that one player who's always going to go freaking left or always diverge from the group, here's the thing. There is a way to train it, and it needs to be done lightly and gingerly and without him knowing, or her. They want to split the party with one person because we've all had that freaking player who's just like, no, I'm going to Tel Aviv. Like, what? Make sure that when you designate time for groups, between groups, the lion's share goes to the larger group. It simply does. You know, the larger group has more people. They might get 30 minutes to his 10. They might get 20 minutes to his 10. Hell, they might get 20 minutes to his 5. That person has to realize that not sticking with the group, making things purposely difficult, because generally this person knows they're making things difficult. I've dealt with this player many years. There's a part of me that thanks God I don't have to deal with him anymore. He always did it. He always just if the group was going left, he went right, even though it's like right is certain death, and he'd be like, "Yeah, I'm going right. I'm gonna see where this takes me." Really, dude? Really? So you're not punishing the player because they're gonna see it as a punishment. Be prepared for them to look at this as an active punishment. Oh, because I didn't stick with a group, I only get 5 minutes, so they're 20. I have 5 players over here. You're 1 player. Each one of them is getting 5 minutes, so they get, 25 minutes. To your 5 minutes, everyone is getting an equal share of time. It's just you're one guy. We get 5 minutes, and you get 5 minutes of full interaction, where the rest of the group is getting their 25 minutes. So be prepared to explain that to the player, because trust me, they're going to see it as a punishment. They're gonna. One key point to that, to manage or be prepared to manage, is when that player starts going off on their own and they get 5 minutes and the rest of the group gets 25, they might start getting disruptive. Manage that. And disruptive players are difficult to manage. Let them know, like, hey, you can't participate. Hey, just keep making that little barrier. Like, hey, I'm sorry, this is this group right now. They got to focus on this. What am I supposed to do? Oh, you
got to be the
went,
bouncer between groups. You got to make him be envious about everybody who's inside the club. So
exactly, you got to make him want to join the club, and it's a way to train behavior. And you do it slowly, you do it nicely. The behavior will come around. But if you make it turn into a punishment, trust me, you're not breeding good emotions at that point. Now they're joining the group out of frustration and all the negative connotations that come with that. You don't want that. You want everything to come from a positive place. Positive places are very important. I can't stress that enough. So be the bouncer and all that with the one player. Now, more to Aaron's point, because I want to focus back on that, because it was great with the one car in modern society. In Star Wars, Star Trek, one ship. When it comes to Dungeons and Dragons, God bless you DMs who are like, you guys are walking everywhere, because it's just, okay, I walk. This is what people did in the Middle Ages. We walked everywhere.
That's true.
So,
but in Dungeons and Dragons, though, when you're thinking about walking everywhere, like, I feel like that's probably the hardest one, where you can group them together by vehicle or transport. So it's very likely that you will have one person just wanting to dissent from the rest of the group, and you might always have somebody who does that.
And that's where I'm going to give training tool number 2. If the time does not work, and especially with you dungeon masters out there, the great advantage that you have in the Dark Ages is the world is still wild. I'm going off on the left path. Cool. You walk right into a bear den. Cool. A cougar spots you and think you as lunch. Cougars don't attack groups of 5 people. Why? Because that's a lot of people. And they're not gazelle.
There'd be 2 of those 5-legged gazelle.
But when there's just one, a cougar thinks that a mighty impressive meal. That is another learning tool, is when fighting alone is the worst damn way to fight. There are rules of gunfighting, and one of the main rules of gunfighting is bring as many friends as you have. Because that's what you want. The more guns, the merrier. But props to you, dungeon masters, to deal with it. A way that you can get around that is encumberment. Always look into the encumberment rules. I always highly recommend DMs to be frugal. I'm going to use the word frugal with encumberment, because here's the thing. You'll get the player like me who really will find out the weight of a 1300s lantern. Now, thank God D&D lays out every piece of equipment. Oh, you have a loincloth. That's 0.5 pounds. Thank God for that. But encumberment is a great way if you are frugal on encumberment. Suddenly, when the players have hit it rich, it's hard to carry a chest full of gold. You need what? You need a wagon. The wagon keeps everyone together. Bring the wagon. If they have a horse, there is one horse. Try to limit. Not everyone's got a freaking horse. Horses are expensive. Look it up in D&D. They are not cheap. Not everyone in the Middle Ages had a horse. Actually, most people didn't. If they had a horse, it drove a plow. So bring the wagon. Use encumberment to your advantage. No, you don't want to walk everywhere because you're carrying 60 pounds of gear. If any last one of our players have ever been in the Boy Scouts or the military, they know a 60-pound ruck is not exactly comfortable to walk 8 hours wearing. By the end, your boots will be filled with blood. It's not fun.
In D&D, you can also utilize terrain to keep the party together. So, you're walking on a path. If you're walking between a mountainscape, there's not a lot of ways, unless somebody's going to sheer face scale a mountain. Okay, which in that case, you have a whole different problem.
That one player I talked about, he would have scaled a mountain.
You would have scaled it down. Well, in that case, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. I mean, you really can't keep them together at that point. He is gung-ho, bent on hell. And as we have talked about in the past, in these types of situations, it's usually best to have that conversation after game. Hey, stay back for a second. Are you not having fun? Are you having a problem?
Why are you just pissing me off for pissing me off's sake? This player would have looked you in the face just to see the look on your face. Oh, God, I'm so happy I don't game with him anymore.
I know who you're talking about, too.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. Because I'm just, it just makes me so happy that I don't deal with him. God, he would go left every time. So keeping that party together, that's one way when you have the deviant player. Encouraging the other players to stay together as a group. One of the other things that you need to do is build firm bonds. Building firm bonds keeps group cohesion. When you have players that are antagonistic to each other and always bickering and stuff like that, as a storyteller, to maintain group cohesion, it is highly recommended that you create positive moments in your story. For example, a player is fighting a goblin. Let's just use a goblin in a good old goblin fight. Player's having a hard time. He's not defeating his goblin. Other player throws his spear, spearing said goblin, right? Instead of just saying he throws the spear, and this is where I talk about fudging rolls. Say this goblin's got one more hit before your spear lands. I don't know why. Why? Because I'm the storyteller. I can say that. I rolled in that 20. Now roll your spear. See if it hits him first. Creating positive moments. You didn't just steal my kill. Instead, you saved my life. Creates a positive bond. Try to create those moments. They can be artificially created. I have created them in the past, unbeknownst to my players. I have done this.
Now I'm interested. I'm going to start looking back.
Start thinking. You'll be like, oh, shit. So creating positive moments between players to create group cohesion is great. I have to say that I attempted to run a protracted campaign with my players going off to like other freaking countries, it was largely unsuccessful.
The biggest example of your splitting the party game was the Wraith game. Everybody had their own. Everybody had their own storyline in that, and I don't think it was a terrible go at it, but it was tough because you had so much dead time between player turns.
I was actually thinking more of my vampire game where you ended up as La Sombra in Spain. Nick was like Ventru
your
in
Generations
Italy.
game. Yeah.
That was I would say that was an unsuccessful game. And I learned a lesson about player cohesion in there. And I also learned about player antagonism and just not letting them knock heads. And that's the game where I really learned, like, this knocking heads stuff, crap. It's crap. It just ruins everyone's time. You know, and that's where I learned also about group cohesion. I was like, dang, I got to keep the party together because there's so much dead time.
Yeah, another thing with group cohesion that you can do is you want your players and your group to have shared goals. So if their skill sets complement each other, again, this is why I would urge you to go back, listen to the Gathering episode. If the skill sets complement each other, it makes sense for the players to be together in almost every situation. Meaning, I'm not good at talking to the bar folk, but I can wield a sword like a devil. Like, you know, like, okay, well, so you're sort of the muscle to my wit. And you're like, well, I can solve all the puzzles in the dungeon, but
and then go on.
As opposed to well, I can navigate the dungeon. Like, you need both to be successful.
And that's also where it comes into play. DMs, GMs, storytellers, masters of the ceremony. That's where it comes into play, making sure that every story has a little bit for each one of your players and their specific skill sets. You got a talker, you need talkie time. Because otherwise, your barbarian does not need the bard, except to create buffs. But I hate that statistical type of playing. I want role playing. I just don't want my bard creating buffs or detracting from enemy stats. I want my bard to be my talker. I want the bard to actually fucking sing. And again, please go back to our, I think, don'ts.
Yeah, the should nots episode. Don't make him actually sing.
Don't make him actually freaking sing or write a freaking story or something. Don't make him actually do that. If he wants to do it on his own accord, by all means, bring the authenticity. Do not force him to do that. But I want the rogue to have their steely moment. I want the wizard to have his, I have to overcome this magical barrier. Why? This increases group cohesion. I'm the barbarian warrior. I can just smash my way through anything until I come up against a magical barrier. Shoot, I left my mage back in the other town. Oh, crap. Now I'm stuck. Now I got to go back through all the freaking traps, back through the zombie hordes to get there. It creates that group cohesion. And that is one hard thing. Like, honestly, for people who like dungeon crawls and stuff like that, give your bard something. Give your rogue something. It really does. Group cohesion via NPC interaction, I guess, is kind of my final point. I have attempted to keep players together just based on the fact that, like, it's your job. I'm your supervisor. I say you stay together. Don't go with that negative tone. No. Let the growth come from the players and the feelings of wanting to play together and enjoying each other's time. The supervisor, I've tried it again and again and again as a younger storyteller. Please, storytellers, take my 20-plus years of experience. And I will tell you, the king saying you will stick together because I told you to stick together, the Jedi Master saying you will stick together because I told you to stick together, does not work. The players have to want to stick together.
We talked about it in the Gathering episode. It's the contract. Okay? A king is not a good enough contract. Okay?
He's not.
Your supervisor is not a good enough contract.
I don't do what my boss tells me to do all the time. My direct boss, not my boss's boss. My boss's boss, he tells me to do something, I get it done. But my direct boss, I kind of ignore him every once in a while.
I guarantee you that if you force your players into doing stuff, if you try to force your players to work together, you try to force your players to move together in a group, that is the time when what is the line from Star Wars? The harder you tighten your grip, Tarkin, the more star systems will slip through your fists. Like, I mean, it's the same thing.
It's the exact same thing. It's in this moment that this is gathering and keeping group cohesion is the time to be subtle, small, and create. The one car is such a subtle way of keeping your group together in the modern world. It is stupidly awesome. Trust me. Sci-fi, you guys, I'm sorry. You guys have the ultimate advantage because ain't nobody got enough to buy 2 ships. Ain't nobody got that. Oh, our ship has 2 shuttlecraft. Well, the engine failed on one of them. That's going to cost $1.5 million credits.
The warp coil's down on the other, so you can't go anywhere.
Dang it. It's just D&D. I don't know. The cost of wagons have gone up because of skyrocketing.
It's harder in D&D if you've got a dissenting player base because it's again, you're going to have to use terrain, you're going to have to use spooky forest, you're going to have to use all sorts of different techniques at your disposal then.
Exactly. And really, guys, this is the time to get creative, not get dictatorial. To become a really key storyteller that can really keep groups together. And trust me, once you start telling your players as you get down the year, I kept you guys together because I only gave you 1 car every time. They'll be like, really?
You son of a bitch. They'll be like, I'm going to rent a car next time.
Next time I'm going to rent a car, you're going to be like, too bad we're playing in sci-fi land now. So shuttles are very expensive. Don't reveal all your hands as a storyteller. Unfortunately, I'm doing that to Aaron, but Aaron's becoming quite the storyteller himself, so I don't really have to worry about it.
By learning your secrets, I can impose them upon you without you even realizing they're happening.
It's great because I don't know. So yeah, that's I guess the final point that I wanted to end on is don't use the supervisor. Use the love and the wanting creation and the subtle creative moves that you will use, and sit down with your game during your maintenance period and create these moments. And trust me, your game will level up in miraculous ways.
I couldn't have said it any better myself, Jared. You got nothing else?
I got nothing else. That's all I got. Those
all
are
right.
the tricks in my pocket.
Well, as I say every time, if you want to reach out to us, give us an episode suggestion that you want to hear about, levelupyourgamingpodcast@gmail.com. Otherwise, tell your friends, subscribe, rate, review on all your favorite podcasting sites. And for Jared, I'm Aaron. Have a good week, guys.
Have a great week, everyone.